Hey guys, Zach Greenwald here with Strength Ratio, and we're finally getting into our sustainable training series for CrossFitters. Our CrossFitters have been very patient as we've wrapped up the sustainable training series for weightlifters, and if you're a weightlifter catching on just now, know that you can scroll back to watch all of the weightlifting videos. Now we're starting with a needs analysis video for CrossFit. We didn't start with one for weightlifting just because the variables are so much greater in CrossFit. In fact, the weightlifting is just one component of CrossFit's overall sport, whereas weightlifting in and of itself has two major variables, three if you're considering the total. Doesn't matter your age group or your weight class, everyone's reaching overtime for a higher total. So a different story here with CrossFit. And we're making a needs analysis for you to know how to prioritize different pieces in your training and know what you're getting into. So we're gonna start very general and then get into the individual considerations. The energy system for the competitive side of it, for which everyone participates in, which is the CrossFit Open, is largely aerobic power and lactate threshold training. So though CrossFit features just about all energy systems, the event that the most compete in at the same time, both competitors and fitness enthusiasts who are doing CrossFit for fun, features this primary energy system. So that's what you're getting into. There are age divisions in the CrossFit Open, but for those who are excelling at the end range of regionals and onto the games, there are very specific weight and height characteristics. So if you're an outlier on those average height and weight categories, we know that we can alter our weight, but we can't really alter our height. A sport like weightlifting will have a weight class just for about any weight and height, but for CrossFit, before you even get into the door, you might be influenced as to whether you take this on a serious competitive route or a route for fun, just based on your profile with both weight and height. We're going to talk about the movements involved with CrossFit as well as the force production involved. The primary movers feature squatting down to the ground, hinging at the hips, pulling and pressing in a few different planes. The force and power outputs are a blend of different sports. The weightlifters will have high velocity with not nearly as much force as powerlifters who have lower velocity, greater force. The CrossFitter has to be somewhere in the middle. As for common injuries, now CrossFit has shown to be no more injurious than other major sports. In fact, less injurious than other sports that involve high motion cutting, such as basketball, soccer, and the like. CrossFit is not inherently dangerous at all. We're just saying the common injuries that we see pertain to the low back and shoulders. And in this series, we'll be able to help you out and know how to avoid these common injuries. But on the whole, this is what we see most commonly, though it is not a dangerous sport. It is no more safe or dangerous than weightlifting, powerlifting, or any other strength sport. Performance and fitness characteristics, these are two distinct categories when we talk about sports like baseball or basketball or football, where when you take football, for example, the fitness characteristics, what you see at a combine, that might be crazy output here for some athletes, but they can't show as high performance as those who may score lower. So the person who does the best at the combine isn't always the best on the field. That's why NFL scouts and coaches will watch lots of video. For CrossFit though, this is kind of a blurred line. There isn't really even a slash. Your fitness in the gym is the same type of performance that you need in the open, local competitions and beyond. So we want to know this before we ever really sit down with our goal sheet, because we might start to see where we need to focus and where we might fall. But our individual analysis is going to lead us into a few different things, discussions over strengths and weaknesses and how you may want to improve them. We're going to talk about the different short versus long-term goals that you might want to have and what might be in your best interest to provide the most sustainable training. But we're going to start with age. Now, we have here, which is different than CrossFit's larger umbrella or pyramid specifically, the long-term development of an athlete regardless of age. Though it's important to know that despite an athlete's age, long developmental periods are required to excel in each of CrossFit's subcomponents. So a weightlifter wouldn't want to jump full-blown into a weightlifting program for an advanced athlete. They'd want a lot of developmental time. The same holds true for gymnastics, endurance runners, and powerlifters. All of these are components of CrossFit, so this long-term development model that we've created is helpful for each and every age. We have practicing skill at the bottom, followed by strength, then an aerobic foundation that can allow you to push Metcon at the top. Now, we're not just talking about skill being pistols, handstand walks, snatch, and jerks. It can just be the skill of the movements themselves and your ability to perform them with great efficiency before being tossed into a Metcon. Now, the younger athletes have a longer developmental time, right? They can take this long-term approach without any type of time crunch. So a very young athlete who is going in new to the sport would want to follow this progression. Someone who's in the open senior field and even in the masters field, if they want to take the long-term game on the competitive route, they too would want to follow this. However, if you're trying to take the short-term route, which might not be as sustainable, and you're trying to do better in the open specifically, this might look a little bit different, but we recommend thinking about CrossFit training with a longer-term development, working on its subcomponents before pushing the Metcon. Because if you're not strong, and if you're not skillful, you can't really express that in a Metcon when the intensity is higher. As for general strengths and weaknesses, we can look at it versus, does someone need more strength or cardio? That's pretty easy to observe, but we do know that the general strengths and weaknesses involved with CrossFit are a lot more subcategorized in terms of skill. So we need to make sure, again, that we are covering our bases. Long-term development will help eliminate these strengths and weaknesses over time. It's that idea in our motto of wait for the cookies, where you might not be going to regionals this year, but can you get to regionals 5 years from now if you create a good foundation and have a good approach? The last thing and what this all leads to is realistic goal setting for CrossFit. In no other sport will I match my free throw shooting to that of a pro basketball player. A golfer won't compare their drive to Rory McIlroy's, what's his name?
Rory McIlroy.
Rory McIlroy's drive. But in CrossFit, it's totally different. People who are just getting in have the ability to compare their scores directly to those at the very top end. And they might fall into the trap of creating unrealistic goals based on where they are in their development, age, weight, or height. Because you have to see where that upper echelon is and where you fall. It's going to help you know where to look. So if you want to take the long-term approach and you work 5 or 6 days a week and you work with your body, you can't go into a CrossFit class and risk a shoulder injury doing snatches 5 days a week. That type of competitive type program would not be appropriate for you in our opinion. That would be a short-term goal because you get that rush and that excitement of doing high skill stuff, but you may risk injury. The long-term approach will allow you to really analyze where you are versus where you have the end range potentials of being based on all of these considerations. If you want to have fun with the sport, but you also want to be competitive, CrossFit has plenty of local competitions, RX, Scale, and now even Elite. Just be honest with yourself and know where it would be appropriate to compete. There's a lot of stuff on social media about what programs to follow, what exercises to do for CrossFit, but there isn't really a lot of context. So in this series, we're going to try to provide what is not just sustainable, but what is an appropriate context for someone's CrossFit training for different age groups, abilities, and prior experiences of exercise. So welcome and please follow along, comment, share, like below, and you're going to be exposed to the weightlifting series for CrossFit youth or kids, open field, and masters in the weeks to come. Thanks, guys.